Morning and welcome to Fantasy Baseball Code Red on Enravio.com.
Did you order the code red?
You don't have to answer that question.
Hell yes.
You want answers?
I'd like to order one right now.
You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Hey, welcome back, folks, for week 16 in fantasy baseball action. We've got the three amigos back today. General, how are you today?
I'm fired up today.
Fired up
I
today.
am fired up.
Commish?
Doing good. Glad to be back after a little hiatus.
A little hiatus for the Commish. All right, let's jump right into it. We're going to actually save our top story for a couple of minutes here. Let's go over a couple of quick things first. We have some trades to announce. I'm sure people probably know about these for the most part already, but we had a big trade, the biggest trade, Matt Garza going to the Texas Rangers.
And it's already paid dividends for them because he's already pitched one great game.
Listen, you know what? They gave up a lot to get him, but it's a great move for them. They really needed an arm, and they got a quality arm in Garza. They gave up Olt, they gave up Justin Grimm, and they gave up C.J. Edwards, and then the proverbial player to be named later. But I think it's a great move for them.
Yeah, I think it's great for him, and I think it'll work out for them. And you know what? Olt and Grimm and those guys, they might be decent major leaguers, but I don't think they gave away any superstars.
Well, I think Olt among the group is probably the best prospect. We'll get into a little bit later in the waiver wire segment, the fantasy impact on these trades. But then we've got K-Rod moving to Baltimore. Not a huge impact really. I mean, in fantasy it's a little bit of an impact because he's not going to be getting any saves over there. He's
That's the
second
problem.
man.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
So
And then Soriano back to the Bronx.
I like that one. I mean, you know what? For the Yankees, it made all the sense in the world to bring him back because I think that the Cubs are handling most of the money, which is not really the issue right now. The Yankees need a bat in the worst way. They need him. They're getting Jeter back hopefully tomorrow. Granderson's already been playing in the minor leagues. He's played yesterday 5 innings. So at least get some of these offensive guys back on the field while they deal with their pitching issues, which is a whole other story.
Yeah, you know what? It was a situation for the Cubs where it was really about money. I think Soriano's owed $18 million on the final year and a half of his contract. Yankees gave up $6.8 million. So I'll tell you honestly, I mean, it was just a situation where the Cubs got $7 million to unload some baggage, and that's really all it is. They got a marginal prospect in return, so not a big deal in terms of impact for the Cubs, except for saving some money, and not a huge fantasy impact. I would imagine that Soriano is going to play pretty well for the Yankees down the stretch. So if you have him, hold him.
I think it's a good bat. Fills in for them, especially with the A-Rod issue going on there right
Boy,
now.
we're going to go there. We're going to get there. Don't worry.
But he's a former fan favorite, so wasn't too expensive really in Yankee terms. So makes sense, right?
So we're coming out of the All-Star break. Some exciting stuff happened there. I know, Commish, you were down at the Fan Fest.
I got to go to the Fan Fest. It's one of a few I've been to. It was a little lackluster from what I had expected, but the highlight was I did get to meet Doc Gooden.
Doc Gooden, nice guy, very nice guy.
Terrific guy. Spoke to him a little bit actually while he was signing the ball. Got an autograph from him, and he still looks like he could go out there and pitch, man. Yeah. He really looks good. So.
And I saw you taking some snapshots of Chris Russo.
Yeah, Chris Russo.
Are we going to be getting a phone call from the Mad Dog later?
Yeah, we had Chris Russo was there, and then the MLB channel was there. I don't know I guess some of the snapshots I had, Lou Brock was in one of them.
Right.
But it was interesting.
Yeah, some good stuff. And then the Futures game was interesting. Got to see a couple of guys I was interested in seeing, Syndergaard and Montero for the Mets, Bogarts. You had the Davidson home run. It's good to see. It's a great. Whoever thought of that was brilliant actually, because it's really good to get a glimpse of the future. During the All-Star break and seeing some of these guys. So that was pretty interesting. And then the All-Star game itself. The moment for me was Mariano's moment.
Yeah, that was a great idea too. Whoever thought of that?
That was
just giving him a moment on the stage.
Classy moment for a classy guy. So I was happy to see that.
All players on both sides standing out on the field, giving him a hand when he came in.
It was nice.
Might be a little weird for him though. The only man on the field sitting there throwing, warming up, and everybody's looking at him.
Yeah.
But well deserved.
Yes,
well
absolutely.
And right before the All-Star break, or coming out of the break, I guess, we had the Tim Lincecum no-hitter, which I didn't want to miss mentioning. 146 pitch
I
effort.
tell you.
Which he followed up with an 8-run disaster afterwards.
This league does not have a good history of guys throwing 146 pitch no-hitters and then being anything decent the rest of the year.
Right.
If he
See
follows-
Johan
If he
Santana.
follows Santana's path, his career is over.
And Santana's not the only one. There have been others in the same boat.
And then one more quick news item before we get into the big story. Pedroia's contract, 8 years, $110 million.
This is brutal. This is ridiculous. This is beyond ridiculous. If these teams haven't learned at this stage of the game that these long-term deals more often, probably 85% of the time, do not work out in the end, and I'm not talking like the last year, I'm talking the last 4 years, then they're lost. Because the only long-term deal that I can think of right now, top of my head, that was 10 years, that was Jeter. That one worked out from day one till the last year was a little weak. Last year of a 10-year deal. This is crazy. He'll be 38 years old.
Exactly.
Well, he'll be 37 when the contract expires. It's an 8-year deal for $110 million. Personally, I don't think it's as bad
It's terrible.
as some of the other ones we've seen because it's an 8-year deal. He finishes at 37. He's not tied into 41 or 42, and it's $13.75 million a year. They didn't give him $20 million, $25 million a year. So.
For a second baseman that hits 280 with 17 homers and 60 RBIs. That's what you just paid for.
And he steals, 20 bases a year. And he's a linchpin on that team.
Does he steal 20 bases, Commish?
Sometimes.
I think that's a little bit of a reach.
But, it may not be one of the worst ones, but again, 8 years, I gotta agree, that is just ridiculous at this stage of the game at his age, right? I mean, if you get him at the beginning of the career, all right, 5 years should be the most that any of these
Write it
teams
down
are doing.
right now. That deal will be sucking the life out of Boston in 4 years. Guaranteed.
I don't think it's that bad. I'm not saying it's a good deal.
Well, where are you going to go from 15 homers? You're going down. He's not going up. So that means he's going to be at 10 homers in 5 years. And then at 38, he'll be at 3 homers and 2 steals. It's a
Okay.
bad deal. No good.
It's not the worst I've seen. That's all I'm saying.
Commish, like the 5 years, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
Even that's a
yeah.
reach, but the 5, done.
Yeah, that's the maximum, I think, especially for a player his age.
Yeah. All right, let's save our energy, guys, because we got a big topic. We got a big one to
There's
come
2
over
big
here.
topics. Let's not forget that.
All right, let's start with the obvious one. Ryan Braun negotiated, I guess, a 65-game suspension with Major League Baseball. He's going to lose about $3 or $4 million in salary over the course of the 65 games.
Ooh,
Jump
boo-hoo.
change. Jump
Yeah,
change.
exactly.
He tips the waiter that at the Waldorf Astoria.
Yeah, I got to tell you, you guys know how I feel about Braun and this whole situation. And, I'm very happy to see him getting what he deserves, although I think he should have been a candidate for a 100-game suspension. But here's the thing that pissed me off the most. The comment from Braun is, the sheer arrogance of this man baffles me.
Money makes you arrogant.
Well, I think it's more than that.
Not to mention the people's lives he's ruined in the process.
And
right?
the damage he's done
Right.
to the game. But what he said is, I finally realized that I made a mistake. Hold on, man. You didn't realize that when you were shooting your ass all these years? It finally occurred to you
Ryan.
that you made a mistake?
Ryan, come back to us, Ryan.
Holy crap. What is with these
A
guys?
single moment of clarity finally, huh?
I have a little twist on Ryan Braun, which I'm going to tie into our other friend in a moment. But my first question number 1. The collective bargaining agreement calls for the first offense to be a 50-game suspension.
Yes.
Okay, so why are we now sitting here today discussing a 65-game suspension? That is a question that no one has answered at this point in time.
I haven't heard anybody ask it.
It's been asked. We have a 50-game suspension. That's what the collective bargaining agreement, which everyone stands behind when all this crap happens, it's always the collective bargaining agreement. Well, the agreement says 50 games. He's given 65-game suspension. So it was negotiated down from where?
It should have been negotiated down from 100 because they all knew. Let me tell you
But
something.
wait a minute. How can you negotiate down from 100? 100 is for your second, like Bartolo
Yes,
Colon.
but we all know
Right,
he
right.
was guilty now.
But he was
got off on a
exonerated.
technicality.
But he-
He
but-
wasn't exonerated.
but that's the point.
He got off on a technicality.
that's the point.
There's a big difference. Here's the situation. I think they had a boatload of evidence on him, and they told him, minimum, you're not playing again this year. And he agreed to it, knowing that it could have been worse. That's my feeling.
Okay.
Because I got to tell you right now, he deserved a 100-game suspension, and
Well, legally he didn't.
legally.
Okay, well,
Legally.
these guys want to stand behind all these collective bargaining agreements. Well,
I
what
think
happened
the
this
union
time?
is finally softening on backing these guys up at this point because you can't anymore. You can't.
It's
you
rampant. Yeah, there's
You can't.
nothing they can do.
So anyway, so Braun, I'm happy you got what you got. I
Wish it
hope-
was more.
I hope your career goes to hell from here
The
on.
Hebrew hammer.
I hope you lose every, I hope you lose every endorsement opportunity that you've ever had or will have. And now let's get on to the real asshole.
Don't look at me when you say
Can you
that.
say that?
I'm sorry.
Did we hit the?
Is this a family show?
I don't think we have a delay on that, so unfortunately,
That's all right. Nobody's watching anyway.
I'll have to apologize to our viewers for that one. The jackass is okay, right, Christine? All right. The jackass in this situation and the epitome of arrogance is A-Rod.
This guy, I just cannot believe his arrogance, especially, and then he's got to try and make more headlines about trying to come back this week.
Why don't you give us a timeline?
Yeah.
I got the timeline here. Let's break this down quickly. 7/19. All right. A-Rod is supposed to come back on the 22nd. Yu Darvish is pitching for the Rangers. That's the way it was presented to everyone. All of a sudden, on the 19th, mysteriously, the Yankees decide, he'll come back on the 23rd, which is Tuesday. Now, I'm wondering why that date is significant. Maybe you are too? Braun was suspended on the 22nd. That news came out on the 19th. I have a feeling the Yankees already knew Braun was going to be suspended.
Of course
So
they
now
did, yeah.
we move to the 20th, which is the next day. A-Rod is DHing for Scranton, has a tight quad. The injury is described as minor. He DH'd in the game. Wasn't sat, he DH'd. All right, next day, 21st. That was Sunday. A-Rod is scratched from the game. Now he's not playing. We went from a minor injury to you can DH to now you can't play. All right? He gets treatment, and he's going to go fly to Texas to show Girardi he's ready to play. That was on the 21st on that Sunday. Then A-Rod is told, no, you're not going to go to Texas. You're now going to fly to New York and get an MRI. We're going to check this out and make sure you're okay. I believe that was a stall tactic by the Yankees to make some time go by
question.
so Braun can get suspended first before anything else happens. MRI from the Yankees mysteriously reveals you have a grade 1 strain, and you now have to go for rehab, back to Tampa, get treatment, rehab. You'll be out for a minimum of 2 weeks. Okay? That was on the 20. That was also on the 21st. 2 days later, 3 days later on the 24th, A-Rod says, you know what? I'm going to hire my own doctor to look at this and see what the situation is. Dr. Michael Gross from Columbia in Manhattan is hired. He's an orthopedist. He looks at the MRI and says, you're not injured. You're fine. I don't see anything on this thing that says you're injured. Then he proceeds to go on a campaign on ESPN, at WFAN, telling the world A-Rod's not injured. Okay, great. Yankees issue a statement, and they refer to A-Rod as Mr. Rodriguez 3 times. He's referred to as Mr. Rodriguez
Now,
this
listen,
and
let me
Mr.
tell you right
Rodriguez
now,
that.
When you're addressed as Mr. So-and-so by your employer, you're in trouble.
And
Okay.
It's like your mother calling
Yeah.
you by your first
Yes.
name, your
And
full
middle
first
name.
name.
Michael
Middle name.
Vincent,
Gregory Joseph, get in here. You know it's not going to be good.
Michael Wade.
Mr. We'll get back to that later.
We'll get back to that later.
Mr. Rodriguez said this and Mr. Rodriguez said that. Okay, so with that, he's been informed by the Yankees. He violated the collective bargaining agreement. He's been fined $40,000 for using a unapproved doctor outside the Yankee system.
At what point did Cashman tell him to shut the F up?
That was back a few weeks back, a month ago. That was a month ago when A-Rod was.
He should have taken that advice.
So, where is all this leading to? I believe it's leading to them not wanting him to take the field because they do not want to be in a situation where they know he's going to be suspended. They've already spoken to Major League Baseball. I'm sure Bud Selig has told them, look, he's going to go down. They don't want him to set foot on the field for 2 games, get booed, and then get thrown out for what could be 150 games or who knows,
There
could be
is
longer.
more to this, though. The collective bargaining agreement and the insurance policy that the Yankees have on A-Rod states this. If he misses the first 4 months of the season due to injury, the insurance policy kicks in. The insurance pays 80% of his salary.
That's a big point right
That's
there.
stall tactic number 1. Okay, stall tactic number 2, or the reason for stall tactic number 2, is the fact that, exactly what you said, if they bring him back on the field for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and then ultimately the guy winds up getting suspended, for 100 games or whatever it is, it's a public relations nightmare.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
He will not take the field for the Yankees.
He
in
will
my
never
opinion.
play again for the Yankees. I know.
Even better.
Now the thing is with A-Rod, is being the epitome of arrogance and selfishness. Okay, he's going to appeal this.
Yes, he will.
Unlike Braun, who finally wised up and said, okay, you have me by the you-know-whats.
Be careful now.
I'm being careful.
Christine's got the headset on now. Oh, my God.
He, unlike Braun, is going to fight this to the bitter end, and this is going to be one ugly mess between Major League Baseball, the Players Union, the Yankees, and A-Rod.
It's a disaster.
All right, we're going to take a quick break for a commercial break. We're going to come back. If you guys want to weigh in on this, if there's anybody out there that wants to give us their opinion on this, you can call us at 855-446-7284. That's 855-446-7284. We'll be back in a minute.
I didn't realize that. That
The distance between us has gotten so cold. The best that the said is was said in my head, and the words that you said, and then I believe again in ADD and OCD, and every letter in between, and every single step I take. I'm dying, hoping you can find the time to help me get my life in line, and every single move you make, I can breathe again. Standing at your window screaming, hoping you can hear my voice tonight, screaming till my lungs collapse, so I can finally know what this is all about. This can't happen again. Sorry, but I'm tired of waiting. This can't happen again. Sorry, but I'm tired of waiting. I'm desperate, the truth is you never could know. Tucked in the bed you slept, secrets and lies you kept, you turned your back except you believe again in ADD and OCD, and every letter in between, and every single step I take. I'm dying, hoping you can find the time to help me get my life in line, and every single move you make, I can breathe again. Standing at your window screaming.
Croce's Auto Body, first aid for your auto since 1965. 24-hour towing, free estimates, frame straightening, insurance claims, restorations. 398 Main Street, East Moriches, Long Island, New York. Phone 631-878-1998. InRavio.com. Internet, radio, TV. InRavio.com. Broadcasting to 6.8 billion people. Streaming 24/7. InRavio.com. Shotgun Sound Studios of New York. Professional sound reinforcements. We rent sound system 100 to 20,000 watts. Monitors, side fills, in-ear monitors, separate monitor mixes. Drum mics. Digital mixing consoles up to 32 tracks. JBL, EV, Behringer, Presonus. Over 40 years of experience. Shotgun Sound Studios of New York. Phone 1-800-HEY-DUDE for more info.
After the Admiral had a chance to collect himself. All right, so let's get into as we're still discussing the biogenesis mess. As I was saying, A-Rod is going to be the arrogant one to try to fight this thing, and I guess at this point he's got his doctor involved. All he needs is President Obama to come out and say it's another phony scandal, because there's nothing left for A-Rod. But the impact that this has on the game is really far-reaching. We've got a bunch of guys here that are going to be eligible to be inducted into the Hall of Fame in the coming years, and my feeling is Clemens, McGuire, Sosa, Palmeiro, Bonds, A-Rod, Cologne. Who am I forgetting? I mean, there's
There's a whole long
there's
list
a
at this
laundry
point.
list of these guys, and I say, you know what? I don't think any one of them belongs in the Hall of Fame.
No, I agree. I agree with you, and I think the commission also agrees.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no way to ever go back and try to figure out what their real career should have been. I mean, you got a guy like Bonds, who was a great player. He was a guy that was hitting 25, 30 home runs a year, stealing a bunch of bases, and then you had the whole McGuire Sosa blow up, where these guys are hitting 60 homers every year, and Bonds obviously was jealous and wanted to join in on the fun, and suddenly this guy's hitting 70 home runs a year. I mean, there's no way to determine what their actual statistics should have been. So I say, you know what? You're a disgrace to the game. You don't belong in the Hall of Fame.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a shame for the players in past decades that have played the game clean and put up some really great numbers and really stood above their peers in their class, and they get totally overshadowed by these numbers. It's just a shame.
I think that the impact that these players, going back to, let's say, the late 80s with McGuire and Canseco, before it was really known what was going on, through the 90s where we had the Sosa and McGuire blow up, and then now where we're at today, which is ridiculous. These guys have changed the course of history. They've changed guys' careers. They've made Major League Baseball change their monetary commitments to players and to structure.
Yeah.
They have changed the course of the game, the economics of the game, the way players are signed. They've done everything to make this game different. And like you just said, Greggy, diminishes the performance of a guy who went out there clean and played and maybe put up 23 homers and drove in 100 runs. And played
But
through
not
injuries.
even that. You have guys like Mantle who legitimately set records.
They diminished those guys too.
Hank Aaron.
They diminished him too.
Guys like that.
We're reducing these guys to nothing.
These guys have broken records that were long-standing records that were achieved by guys who were playing the game clean. So to me,
I agree.
It's more than a black mark. It's more than the steroid era. This has impacted the game from day one through forever.
It's tragic. It really is. I mean, every time when I look at that home run record and I see Bonds up there, it disgusts me.
I don't even recognize it. I
it's-
don't even recognize it.
it's terrible.
Bonds breaking Aaron's record is a travesty. Had this continued, we'd be probably, aside from the injuries, we'd probably be talking about A-Rod as the next guy who's going to hit 700 home runs. You know what? Now, that brings us to a different story, though. That brings us to a guy like Pete Rose. Okay? And, his impact on the game and his crimes against the game and whether he's worthy of being inducted in the Hall of Fame. And I know you have an opinion on that.
Yeah,
you have an opinion on that.
I have an opinion on that. After a lot of years, 30 years actually, 30 years it's been now, more than 30 years since Pete, I guess, was received a lifetime ban from baseball, which makes you ineligible for the Hall of Fame. Here's the bottom line. Here's where
Makes
I'm
you
at.
ineligible for everything
regarding baseball.
Anything regarding
You're
Major League
ineligible
Baseball.
to
You
enter a
can't
major league.
manage,
You can't enter a
coach.
stadium.
You can't even enter a stadium.
Right.
Okay.
I think this is beyond ridiculous because at the end of the day, when the smoke clears, Pete Rose, although he bet on baseball, which is against the rules, that rule was put in place right after the 1919
Black
Sox scandal.
Right.
And the reason it was put in place was because of guys throwing games. Guys were performing differently to throw the games. That's the reason why that was done. So since 1919 till today, you know how many incidents we've had of guys throwing games that are documented?
of?
Documented.
Zero.
Let's also document the reason why they were throwing games too back in
For money.
1990.
Because guys weren't making any money.
Like guys like Kaminsky were paying these guys dirt
Nothing.
back
They were
then.
making nothing. So that is no longer an issue.
Right.
Hasn't been an issue since 1919, let's just
Right.
say. So Pete Rose comes along, and Pete Rose was a known gambler. He bet on horses. He bet on baseball, hockey. He loved to gamble. He has a gambling problem. But he also gambled on baseball. I think we're a far cry from difference from what the guys that are doing with steroids and not even being banned from baseball forever versus Pete Rose meeting his bookie at a phone booth in Cincinnati and putting $100 down on the Reds to win tonight because Mario
His
Soto's
own
pitching.
team.
All right, because Soto's pitching. So
Let me,
it makes no sense it makes no sense in my mind for 30 freaking years, and now he's ineligible forever.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Hall of Fame is decorated with all of his achievements except for the plaque,
Okay.
and he's all over Cooperstown. Cooperstown. To
All right,
me,
let me
reinstate him.
respectfully-
Well, hold on, like, one
All
more
right,
point. Make him eligible. Just make him eligible. Stop the farce, because it is a farce. It's ridiculous at this point. No one's gambled in 80 years in baseball. Make him eligible. Let the writers decide if he should be in the Hall of Fame. Let the voting play out for 5 years, and let it be that way. That's all I have to say.
All right.
Pete, we want you back, Charlie Hustle.
Charlie Hustle, let me give you the devil's advocate viewpoint here. Okay? Pete Rose did bet on baseball. Okay? So we know that Pete Rose, since 1919, has bet on baseball. Pete Rose bet on baseball while he was managing a major league team and had the ability to affect the outcome of the game. Pete Rose bet on his own team with the ability to affect the outcome of the
Yes,
game.
he did.
Okay? As with, in my opinion, okay, I see your point, but in my opinion, as with the steroid scandal, okay, this is a situation where it damages the integrity of the game. When you damage the integrity of the game, you don't belong in the game in any way, shape, or form. Okay? Pete Rose had the opportunity. Bart Giamatti gave him the opportunity to come out, come clean, admit that he bet on baseball, and he would have likely at that point served a suspension and become eligible. But we've got another instance here of an arrogant guy who decided he was going to continue to deny that he ever did this. Okay? So in my mind, you're out, Pete. You're out. You're never coming in. You don't belong in.
Well, if that's the case, then all these players should be out forever as well, because
They should.
they're affecting the integrity of the game as well.
Well, you know what? There is talk right now of banishment from the game for steroid use.
Then do it. Then,
And you know
then
what?
stop the farce and let's do it.
The players are getting to the point where they're leaving Major League Baseball with no other option, because no matter what the penalties are, they're continuing to abuse these drugs and the game. And I think being faced with lifetime banishment may be the only course of action that Major League Baseball can take. Commish.
So here's my take on it. You know, the game history is riddled with people that have screwed up the integrity of the game. And there are guys in the Hall of Fame that are known racists, like Todd Cobb.
Okay.
Riddled with, screwing up the integrity of the game. But
Listen, Babe Ruth was no saint.
exactly, and this is my point. So, granted, what he did was very wrong, but I think there is no question that the man has definitely served his penance.
I agree.
And he is still, through grit and not a whole great amount of
Has he
talent,
ever
one
really?
of the best hitters.
Has he ever?
in the
Oh,
game.
listen, you can't argue statistically.
So-
has he ever actually come out and
Yes.
admitted all of this?
He
Yes, he
has.
has.
Okay.
He has.
Then that's step one.
So, and with him, and the General will tell you this, I would lobby for Joe Jackson as well. I think that's another man that should be in there too.
Listen, my feeling
that's been
is
shunned.
I don't care what you do off the field. If it doesn't affect the game. I don't care if Babe Ruth drank beer and ate hot dogs and did whatever I don't care about any of that, because it was done on his own time, it was done off the field, and it had no impact on the game. My feeling is if you've done something, whether it be steroids or betting or anything that's going to affect the outcome of the game or the statistical integrity of the game, then you're out, you don't belong. General, I'll give you the last word.
Well, I guess the only thing I could say is that I think that he has served more of a sentence than anybody in the history of baseball. He's been
Yes.
outcast for 33 years now.
Especially with all the
He's
second
still alive.
chances that are given in
He's
baseball.
still alive.
right?
He's in Cooperstown all the time, signing autographs outside of Cooperstown, the Hall of Fame. He's in Vegas signing autographs all the time. If you walk through the Hall of Fame, as we have many times together, his stuff is littered throughout the entire place. He
It is.
holds so many records. Just put the guy in and let him go. So
I say it's.
let's ask Charlie Hustle.
Yeah.
I think he's calling in.
Yeah, we have a caller, Chuck from Port Jefferson Station. Chuck, you there? Chuck, you there? Line 4.
Yep. Chuck, can you hear us?
All right.
Hold on one second.
Hang in there, Charlie
Hang in
Hustle.
there.
Charlie? Yeah.
All right.
Okay, Chuck from Port Jeff Station, you there?
Yeah, I'm there. How you doing?
Hey, there's Charlie.
How are you, Chuckles?
Listen, I want to weigh in on the Hall of Fame. I got two thoughts. First, I know with Pete Rose and the veteran committee, it's going to get re-voted in. I don't think, and Johnny Bench is part of that. Him and Bench don't get along, so that could be a thorn in Rose's side. And not to mention Albert Bell. I mean, what's his reason for not getting in? Getting in just being what? What do you want to call it? An ingrate to the writers. I mean, he's got a 10-year span. You can compare him to Kiner. I mean, it's a lot better than not being voted in, not being on steroids. And that's my thoughts. Congratulations there, General, on your induction.
You think? Oh, thank you very
Don't
much.
jump the
We'll
gun,
get to
Chuck.
that in a minute.
We're going there.
So you think that Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, and guys like that actually have made basically a stand that they don't want Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame?
Not so much Morgan, but I know Bench.
Bench for sure?
Yeah.
Listen, rightfully so. I mean, actually, you know, Chuck, it was an interesting thing that came out that we forgot to mention is Matt Kemp actually came out this week and said that Ryan Braun should lose his 2011 MVP award. If you remember, it was a very close vote that year. They both had very similar statistics, and Braun wound up winning. And you know what? I say take the award away from him and give it to who rightfully belongs to.
Hey, Charlie, you want him in, right?
Who's that, Rose?
Yeah, you want Rose in the Hall of Fame, right?
Of course he should be in there, but I'm just saying, this politics aside, Bench is a Red, Cincinnati Red through and through. I'm sure he's pretty peed off that he voted on the, betted on the games. I'm sure Bench behind the scenes is pretty peed off about it, and he has a lot to say in that Veterans Committee.
Yeah, I think it's time to put him in. I think he's done a sentence of more than what should have been anyway.
So Chuck, you thanks for the call. You actually gave us a good segue into our next little segment here.
Thanks, Chuck.
We've got an honorable Hall of Fame induction to mention here. We've got the 1983 Comstock High School.
82.
I'm sorry, 82 state championship team. Who we happen to have a member of that team on this panel right now.
Yes, I'm here, and I am part of this.
Congratulations.
Talking about Pete Rose and 30 years of waiting.
We are. I have been inducted.
30 years later.
30
folks.
years after. 31 years after the fact. The 1982 Comstock High School New York State Baseball Championship team will be inducted into the Comstock High School Hall of Fame on September 28th of this year. So myself and hopefully 20 other guys will be at the high school homecoming parade. We've been invited to be the grand marshals of the homecoming parade. You come out and wave and say hello to the generals. I go down Jane Boulevard on a float.
Hey, Christine, should we bring the radio band?
Bring
down
the
to
van!
that? We'll follow you guys.
There'll be general bobbleheads. General bobbleheads, and there'll be commemorative plaques. I'm just joking. Just joking. But
Before
thank you.
Before his head gets too big, let's move on. All right, who's hot, who's not? Jason Worth, 7 for 28 this week, 5 home runs, 8 runs batted in, 5 runs scored, and a stolen base.
Getting a little taste of the Jason Worth of old.
Yes. Andrew McCutcheon, a big week, 8 for 29, 4 home runs, 6 runs batted in, threw in a steal. Will Myers, 529, 2 home runs, 6 runs batted in,
That's the big one right
and
there.
a stolen base. That's a big one, and the next one's a big one. David Price, 2-0.
I guess he's not dead yet.
We talked about this. Been
Yeah.
terrific since he came back from
2.81 ERA this week, 0.81 WHIP. Couple of Angels having big weeks. C.J. Wilson 2-0, Jared Weaver 2-0. Wilson 1.76 ERA, 0.85 WHIP, 14 strikeouts and 15 1/3. Weaver no earned runs, 0.75 WHIP, 17 strikeouts in 14 2/3. So the Angels pitching is coming around.
Coming around finally.
Coming around. Hisashi Iwakuma, 2-0 this week, 1.38 ERA.
Most underrated pitcher in baseball.
Most underrated pitcher in baseball, 16 strikeouts in 13 innings. And, in the midst of all the trading, Edward Mujica, who everybody keeps saying, the Cardinals need
Just
a
keeps rolling
a
along.
closer. Guy saved 4 games this week, didn't give up a run. Who's not hot, guys?
God.
Dustin Pedroia, 2 for 23.
The ink wasn't even dry on that contract.
Not paying immediate dividends
It
on that
was not
contract.
dry.
Mitch Moreland, 2 for 25 this week. Anthony Rendon in the midst of blowing a golden opportunity. The guy gets
Terrible.
handed the second base job. promptly goes 2 for 24.
And you know what? I'll tell you, Danny Espinosa down in the minors is starting to hit really good right now.
Yeah,
So
keep
you
your
might
eye
see
on-
him up.
Keep your eye on that situation. Jordan Zimmerman can't get out of his own way right now. I mean, the Mets raked him over the coals the other night. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Zimmerman.
Well, ever since he got exonerated with the not guilty thing down in Florida, he hasn't really. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the wrong guy.
Actually, you're going to laugh, but Howie Rose on the radio telecast the other night actually called him George Zimmerman. And then promptly went on to say Jordan Zimmerman about 12 times in a row just to make sure that everybody knew that he knew.
Howie, you're no Ralph Kiner. Let's make that statement right now.
You know, with the Mets, speaking of the Mets, you might want to keep on for hot is that Ross Ollendorf. He might have just earned himself a rotation spot.
He may have. He may have.
After the performance he just gave.
He may have.
He's got a really sub 300 ERA, and
Yeah.
he's 8 strikeouts against the Mets this week.
Jeremy Hefner, a guy that we probably advised you to pick up a few weeks ago. If you did, we're sorry.
Oh, well, right now he's pitching like Hugh Hefner. So.
0-2 this week, 18.47 ERA, 2.68 WHIP in just 16 and a third innings.
Back to the Bunny Ranch. That's it.
Yeah, Jeremy, I don't know what's going on. Jeremy's spoken.
That's a backwater reference right there.
Yeah. Justin Verlander, dude, what is wrong with this guy?
This looks bad to me again, but I don't know.
He started to pull it together, and then he went off the cliff again.
You know, we're seeing this with a lot of pitchers this year. I mean, some we're familiar with is like Lincecum and like Kane and Verlander this year. It's really
Very inconsistent. It's the first few signs of what's to come.
Listen, Kane actually, went out and pitched a pretty good game last night.
Yes, he did.
Verlander, this week 0-2, a very healthy 9.26 ERA, a very healthy 2.14 WHIP. The guy's getting knocked around the park.
He is. I mean, these guys used to be money, last year, and now you really got to pick your spots with them and hope you're getting the Verlander of old.
All right, let's move on to injury updates. What's going on with Jeter?
Looks like he'll play in the majors tomorrow, for the Yankees tomorrow, I think. I don't think he'll play today for the Yanks. So.
Yeah. And Dominic Brown, that's a big hit for the Phillies and for anybody that has him on a fantasy team, myself included.
Yeah, especially with the season he's been having. That
Yeah.
kind of hurts for them.
7-day concussion disabled list. Hit his head on the ground diving for a line drive that Beltran hit.
And we all know those concussion symptoms can linger for
Weeks.
Even a year. Look at
Months.
Justin Morneau, right?
I mean, some of these guys, it's a long trip back. And speaking of a long trip back, Tim Hudson,
That's terrible.
a grotesque injury, got stepped on by Eric Young at first base and pretty much snapped his ankle.
Shades of Joe Theismann and Lawrence
Yeah,
Taylor.
it reminded me of. I mean, and Eric Young was a bit shaken up. I don't know if you saw the video.
Yeah,
he went
he was
out.
very shaken
He looked like
up.
he was in tears when he
was
went out there.
He was literally in
okay.
tears. I mean, the Braves players were actually consoling Eric Young. That's how upset he was.
Terrible.
Miami Marlins rookie Marcell Ozuna, rest of the season out with a thumb injury.
He kind of tapered off anyway. Wasn't
Yeah.
really hitting as well. He's a very, very young guy, 20, 21 years old. You'll see
Yeah.
him again next year.
Opened the door for a couple of young prospects we've been waiting
Yes.
for on the
Yes.
Marlins, right?
We'll talk about that in the next segment. Miguel Cabrera out 4 games with sore left hip flexor. They say he's probably going to be back in a day or two.
I think he'll play today, but we'll see.
Yeah, keep an eye on that, folks. That's a situation where if that goes bad, there are going to be a lot of people in fantasy baseball scrambling for a replacement, and that's a guy you just can't replace. Matt Kemp, the saga
Matt
continues.
Kemp is taking up permanent residence on the DL.
I got to tell you.
He's going to change his middle name to DL.
I
Matt
have been in
DL
2
Kemp.
leagues, and it's just been horrible. I mean, this guy can't stay on the field. Play Buckholes, what's going on? End of August, I'm hearing.
Another one of those where you don't know. It could be September with him. Who knows?
Now he's got the shoulder issue. Cueto, another guy that's no new news on him.
They've got him in hiding somewhere.
Morrow, I know it
Brandon
says 6
Morrow?
more weeks. I think he's done.
You're
I
not
mean,
Brandon
anytime
Morrow.
you're going to visit Dr. James Andrews, you know it's a bad thing.
He could go to Dr. Bombay. You're not going to see him again
Right
this
now
year.
they're trying to avoid surgery with him. They're going to give him 4 to 6 weeks to try to rest, but I think he's done for the year. Big one, Jason Grilli. Big one for the Pirates.
He's done.
I'm kind of liking this, though, for my fantasy team because I have Melancon, so it's boding well for me.
Look at you guys rooting for injuries.
We'll discuss that in the table wire, but he's out 4 to 8 weeks, really.
Effectively ending his season.
Pretty much. Or at least fantasy season. Raphael Betancourt, 15-day disabled list, appendicitis. He
Come
should be
on,
back.
man up.
Man up. Man up. Come on back. Another guy that's been horrible all year, Aramis Ramirez.
Stay on the DL.
Even when he's on the field, I mean, he's a day-to-day proposition virtually every day. You know, you don't know what you're going to get out of this guy. Grandison, I think you mentioned earlier, maybe next week.
Yes.
Matt Holliday probably back in there today, tomorrow. So if you have Matt Holliday, you can probably get him into your lineup and feel pretty good about it. Let's get into waiver wire. It's going to be a lot of, kind of what we talked about already, but with Ozuna out for the year, we've got Christian Yelich up. He was a guy that we told you to keep an eye on a couple of weeks ago. Off to a decent start, but sweet swing. He's going to get plenty of at bats down the stretch, so definitely a guy you probably want to jump on. Alt.
Yeah, I think Chicago's been looking for a third baseman. I think this trade hopefully is going to give him some semblance of an answer.
Right. And he's going to play third. He's not
Yeah.
playing second base. And I think he's going to get in there right away. The issue with him this season has been the vision issues. Apparently, he's taking some kind of, medicative eye drops that are helping. But this guy was a big-time prospect coming into the season. Before he had.
It was. The Rangers used to have him pretty high on the list.
Yeah. So tell us about Melancon.
Yeah, so he was basically the setup man for Jason
Having a
Grilli
great
in
year.
Pittsburgh, having a great year, and now he's stepping in. And he seems to be getting most of the save opportunities
With experience
there.
too.
Yes.
He's not new
Yeah.
to the closing gig. He
I
has
think he did it
experience.
for Houston
Yep.
years back, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Here's a guy that you may snicker at, but if you don't have him, pick up Marlon Byrd. If he's out there,
I don't think he'll be out there in many leagues at this stage.
you
of
know
the
what?
game.
Probably not.
20 homers and 60 ribbies at this stage of the game. He should be on someone's roster.
He should be on someone's roster, but as much as the Mets deny that they're going to trade him, it makes absolutely no sense to keep him. I mean, the guy is signed through the rest of the year. He says he wants to stay with the Mets. Somebody's going to throw a little bit of money at him next year. He's not part of the long-term plan for the Mets. Get something for him. Trade him. Get whatever you can. Brad Miller.
Yeah, he's been great for Seattle. He's part of that young infield with Nick Franklin, and now you got Brad Miller over there. I think they're going to be pretty set with that. That's going to be a good team in years to come, especially with some of the young pitching that they have. And he's been terrific this year since his call up.
Yeah. And we've got the situation in Atlanta with Hudson being out now for the season. There was talk of Chris Medlin actually losing his spot and being bumped into the pen, but that was before Hudson got hurt. So really now you've got two spots with three candidates. It's Medlin, Alex Wood, and Brandon Beachy coming back soon. So keep your eye on that situation. Beachy upside, Wood upside.
Yeah, I like Alex Wood.
And Wood will escape the innings cap because they've stretched him out. Right. He hasn't really pitched a lot. He should make it through to the end if he can secure a spot. Beachy could be a 5-6 inning pitcher. May not be able to go every. Who knows? You don't know. But
right. But remember, he was their ace before he got hurt.
Right.
So it's certainly worth a flyer. Willie Peralta. Here's a guy that I've had and dropped and picked up and dropped on several occasions this season. The guy will pitch lights out for a couple of games in a row, which he did this week until last night when he got raked over the coals. And so you know what? He is a guy that you want to pick up if he's got a good matchup and you need a starter. You might want to use him, but certainly not an every week fixture in your lineup. Chris Archer.
Been lights out the last 4 or 5 starts.
He's been a gem.
Just wondering if he can keep it going. I don't know, but I hope he can.
Yeah. And then last night, Mets called up Henry Mejia, who, he was one of their higher-rated prospects until he wound up having Tommy John a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, actually. And he was actually in the process of developing a nasty cutter that people were actually comparing to Mariano Rivera. And wound up getting hurt and had the Tommy John. They had to alter his delivery, so he kind of lost the cutter. But went out last night, pitched 7 scoreless innings, 7 strikeouts, scattered 7 hits, no walks. Maybe a guy you want to take a flyer on.
And worth a flyer. They're moving to a 6-man rotation, so I guess he's going to pitch. I don't know if it was a spot start or if he's going to pitch, but it sounds like he's going to pitch.
They're giving him a shot to be in that 6-man rotation. The 6-man rotation, obviously, because they're trying to keep the innings down on Wheeler, the innings down on Harvey, which makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah. One other guy that he got lit up pretty good when he first came up, but I think he has some really good upsides. Is Erasmo Ramirez for Seattle. He's going to get a shot at the starting rotation. So keep an eye on him. I think you're going to see some good numbers out of him.
And there's a couple other guys, too, that we should mention quickly. Miguel Alfredo Gonzalez has signed a $50 million 6-year deal with the Phillies coming out of Cuba. He'll make a few starts in the minors, and supposedly you're going to see this guy in the majors in a couple of weeks. I have no idea. You are throwing darts right now with this guy. I don't know what you're going to get. But you know what? At this stage of the game, he hasn't pitched much all year. He's got plenty of innings to go.
Right.
You pick him up, you throw him on your roster, and you see what happens.
He's worth it because, here's a guy who, his potential is kind of off the charts. I mean, he's a guy that really could develop very quickly.
Maybe. 2 other guys I'll throw out there quickly. Chris Carpenter, I don't know where he's at now. Back 2 weeks ago, it sounded like this guy was going to be pitching in the majors. He got bombed in a minor league start. Then he turned around and says, I have to reassess where I'm at in the world. Who knows?
Well, apparently he's having trouble again with the numbness,
Yeah.
the tingling in his hands. So they're taking a big step back with him.
That may go nowhere. And the last guy I'm going to bring up right now is Brian Wilson. No, not from the Beach Boys.
Dodgers taking a look at him.
They are looking at this guy,
Yeah,
supposedly
seriously.
throwing in the mid to the low 90s, healthy, not a lot of innings. Closers are needed out there everywhere. Keep an eye on Brian Wilson.
Just worked out for him. I think it was yesterday. A bunch of other teams too in UCLA.
Listen, you know what? Throw him on your roster. If you've got a spot to stash him, he could pay dividends down the road. One other guy, Junior Lake, for the Cubs.
That's a good start.
Yeah, he's off to a pretty good start. He's 15 first 31, batting .484, 2 home runs. The Cubs are gonna give him a shot and then, see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have like blow-away stats in the minors, so I'm not really sure what you're going to see in the majors.
Right.
There's a couple of good games, everyone gets all excited, but I'm not
Well, he's
sure.
23, so you don't know what you're gonna get. It's one of those situations. But all right, let's.
Admiral, before we go to the next segment, there's one thing I want to bring up. I don't know if you caught it this week. In our fantasy league, we didn't do our Man Crush segment, but the General actually benched Puig one day this week. Could the romance be faltering?
We took a break. We were on a break for one day.
All right. Well, now that you brought it up, let's quickly do our Man Crush because we want answers.
I'm going to give you the truth.
Why was Puig benched?
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah. Well,
Listen, the Generals team is struggling offensively now coming out of the break, and Puig has been part of that. We had a couple of 0 for 4s and a couple of 0 for 4s. Like, again, last night he was 0 for 5 with 4 Ks, I think. So he was in a 1 for 15 funk that
wait,
night.
the guy hit .308 this week.
Yeah, but he...
1 home run, 3 runs batted, and a steal.
No.
Okay.
He was 1 for... Go back to where, he was 1 for 15 when I benched him.
All I want to know is...
That's called managing.
All I want to know
managing.
is his picture down, is the wife back up?
Yes, that's what I want to know.
Picture is still there.
Oh, Karen, I'm sorry.
All right.
He's back in there. He had a 1-game hiatus. We're back together again.
All right.
Yes,
we're
he
gonna,
did have
We're
an
going to be
interesting
watching that. Matt Harvey, another stellar week, has 1 win to show for it, 2 starts, no earned runs. He gave 1 unearned run in 2 starts, 0.60 whip, 17 strikeouts in 15 innings pitched. This guy has 13 games this year where he gave up 1 or less run.
Could you imagine his record on a team with some run support?
Could you imagine if he was getting any kind of run support? Unfortunately, it's going to come down to a situation here where Wainwright's probably going to get the Cy Young Award and not Harvey, and it's all because of run support. You want to give us the Manny Machado update this week? A little rough week for Manny?
It's been a little gloomy since the All-Star break for Manny, although last night he did perk up a little bit. He had a home run, 2 runs batted in last night, but he was below the Mendoza line until last night.
Right.
So,
Hit
since the
207
All-Star
on the week, a couple of home runs, 5 RBI. Yeah, you don't worry about him. He's a kid.
Yeah, I think
he's,
you're right.
He's going to be a little up and down, but certainly,
Get back on track.
this guy's a star and will be a star for a long time. At 20 years old. All right, anybody on the farm? You want to bring up the Springer
I don't know.
debacle.
I'm ready for Jerry Springer to come up for Houston and play at this point because they just make so many odd moves. This Houston team, I don't understand. They just made another odd move. They have J.D. Martinez go down, outfielder. He goes down. Okay, so I'm thinking the natural play would be to finally bring Springer up. No, they don't bring Springer up. They bring up, what's his name, Rob Grossman?
Yeah.
All right, Grossman already had a shot. He batted 198 in the majors. I don't care what he's doing down in the minors right now. He had an opportunity to play. Didn't really do anything with it. Springer now is sitting on 32 stolen bases. He drove in 2 more runs last night. He's got 79 RBIs, 27 homers.
It makes
300.
no sense to me.
This doesn't. I don't know. There's nothing to be gained here. What are they trying to do? Get him to be minor league player of the year? What's the point? It makes no sense. He should be in the major
leagues.
leagues.
Nothing to play for this year. Nothing to play for. And you're right. At this
Get him
point,
some at-bats.
I would want him in right field for the Yankees
Yeah.
right now. I would want him on my team. I don't understand why the Astros would not make this move when we're jerking around with Robbie Grossman's and a litany of guys that cannot hit.
There's got to be something going on.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. So you got a guy in the minors who's going to be a 30-30 minor league player, which I've never heard of before. Is that common? Guys in the minors going 30-30?
I've seen it, but it's not that
I don't
common.
know. I mean, what are we trying to do? Break AAA records? We don't care about AAA. We care about the major league. So
Yeah.
Houston, there is a problem.
Well, and you know what? Again, the problem is you're going nowhere. You know, why not bring the kid up in a non-pressure situation? You know, let him make his mistakes. Let him strike out. Let him,
Right.
let him learn at the major league level.
You're letting everyone else there do it.
It makes all the sense in the world to bring him up now. Like you said, it's non-pressure. They're not in any sort of playoff hunt. So
There's no Super
let him
2
get some
deadline.
at-bats.
Get way past the arbitration deadline. There's no money to be lost here. Now it's about, can we put a quality player on the field, please? You got one
right.
sitting there ready to go, and you won't play him. So
Yeah.
I'm disgusted with the Houston Astros right now.
All right. Anybody else you want to talk about on the farm?
Can't say as I got much there. It's getting kind of sparse.
I mean, we pretty much talked about
yeah.
it. You know, it's been an ongoing thing. We've tried to keep you updated on that.
I will say I am looking forward and hope. I don't know if we're going to get to see it, but I would like to see Archie Bradley come up and see what kind of impact he could have.
Yeah, at this stage of the game, though, with the pitchers versus the hitters, the pitchers, if I were, in a fantasy league, like hopefully you guys out there are, I think with the pitchers right now, you might not even want to waste it unless you were looking for a spot start because I doubt they're going to help you in September when you need them because they're probably almost capped out. But the hitters, that is a different story. You get a hitter that comes up and takes someone's place in the outfield, that could be a grab for a 6-week run where a guy could go off for you.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a different type of thing than a pitcher. Pitcher, you might be throwing it away unless you want one start.
Listen, Puig is the perfect example of that. I mean, you can get a guy that can come up and light the world on fire, and you're right. You don't have to worry about innings caps. You don't have to worry about anything like that.
And
so.
the thing with the way I see the league today is the thing with pitchers is the pitcher generally is given like one start and will think about the next one.
Right.
The hitter is usually given a couple of weeks.
Right.
So the hitter has more of a time to kind of develop and show he can be in the majors. Where the pitcher, it's almost like if you don't pitch good today, you're not pitching in 5 days.
Right.
So it's a different situation altogether.
Well, you're going to see that, and you've got the September call-ups that ultimately will happen. So rookies will make an impact, toward the end of the season. And then you've got the trade deadline. I mean, there's 5 days left before the non-waiver trade deadline, and I think we're going to see some more action. I think we're going to see the Cubs make some moves. I think we're going to possibly see the Dodgers make some moves. I don't think the Yankees are finished yet.
No, I don't think so. And the big thing with that waiver deadline that's coming up is that's where you're going to see guys who could possibly become closers, or the closer is gone and the setup guy goes in. Maybe 2 or 3 moves like that could happen. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think somebody like Will Middlebrooks, I think you might actually see him move. There's been a lot
Yeah.
of talk about the White Sox maybe trading for him.
Right.
Fill some slots there. And even Michael Young's been another one that's been talked about. So I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, Michael Young, I think, will wind up, being one of the players moved. I mean, it's a situation where there are 5 days. If you're not sure of how the non-waiver trade deadline works, it's 5 days at the end of this month. Teams can make any trade that they want without having to pass the player through waivers. After that, then there's another month where they can make trades, but they have to pass the player through waivers, which means that, if you're a team competing in the same division, you can block the trade basically by claiming the player on waivers. So
Yep.
I think you'll see some action in the next 5 days, and then it might slow down a little bit. But
Can I make one more point before we wrap it up?
Yeah.
I know we're up against the clock. Sources have told me, the General, that all A-Rod merchandise has been removed from Yankee Stadium. No, I'm serious. I'm totally
I think
serious.
Modell's is having a big sale right
No,
now.
if you go into the Yankee
90%
store,
off.
if you go into the Yankee store,
know,
and this didn't
you're
happen
right.
just now, this has been going on for months now, all merchandise has been removed. It's very likely to never play a game with the Yankees again.
No, and the
Amen.
Yankees. Listen, you're absolutely right, and the Yankees are, this is part of their plan. They don't want to ever see him on that field again.
I
They don't,
agree.
and this is all part of the plan.
I think half of New York doesn't want to see him on the field again.
I think anybody that's a true baseball fan doesn't want to see this guy on the field again. I mean, I've had it, and if you remember, was a big A-Rod fan. I really was, and he disgusts me now.
I couldn't agree more with the Admiral.
All right, listen, let's wrap it up. Anything else going on, guys?
That's it.
All right. Listen, thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball Code Red on radio.com. 3 of us will be back next week, right?
Yep.
All right, so you'll have the normal lineup next week. And thanks for tuning in. Good luck this week with your team, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Comstock High School, 1982. Yankees.